Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. and we want to call our regular January 2025 meeting of Southport's Planning Board to order. I am Sue Hodgen, our chair, and I'll ask first that everyone silence, please, or turn off your cell phones. We're going to start by removing any remaining hats in the room, and those that can and will, please stand while we have our invocation by Will Hewitt and our allegiance to country and flag.
Our Father in heaven, we are so very grateful that we can come together this evening for the city of Southport and its citizens and converse one with another and find solutions to our problems and make this a better place. Again, we are so thankful, and we ask you that you would guide us in all that we do and that our outcomes will be positive. And we're also thankful very much for our new members to this board that now we can go about the city's business. When we leave here, we ask that you will go with us and that we would travel in safety. And we ask all these things and all thy favors and blessings in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Will. We will move on with tonight's agenda. Item D is approval of our December 19th meeting minutes. You all received a copy of these in advance of our meeting, and they are found on pages 2 through 8 of your packets. I have a couple corrections myself. I'd note on page 4 that it looks like we need a separation of paragraphs there and to capitalize Petrowski in that. And on page 7, I think we need some clarification about the Yacht Basin Parking Overlay District. In the second paragraph on line 10, if we can please change that to read, and I'll get with staff to do this, quote, parking challenges, referencing former Mayor Hadom's vision for the overlay being the driver of the 2021 committee work. Chair Hodgen noted her participation on the earlier committee, unquote. And then continue with, quote, she stressed. In the fourth paragraph, first line, please revise to read, Chair Hodgen inquired whether any of the prior committee's relevant drawings for the overlay had been located, unquote. On page 8, the first paragraph, line 5, correct that, please, to read CARR, C-A-R-R, Insurance Agency, unquote. And finally, as a related aside to the minutes, I want to thank staff for the detailed description included in the minutes in record about the work of Stewart Company, the public input received, and the work of the Comp Plan Steering Committee that's brought our Southport 2050 plan close to the finish line. It's a great compilation of the plan's content and the relevant recommendations. Very recently in a public meeting, a member of city leadership commented that they didn't know much about the plan, except they'd heard, quote, people like to come here and we have storms, unquote. Obviously, they weren't in this meeting last month to hear this detail and haven't reviewed much about it. I hope this in record will help, as well as this same presentation that was given at last week's meeting of the Board of Aldermen. The plan is meant to be the city's blueprint of where it wants to be in 2050, and general guidance and some fairly specific recommendations, UDO updates and innovative planning recommendations for how to bring that blueprint to life. I thank staff, I thank Stewart, I thank those of you on this board now and previous to your being in these seats for your involvement. And I thank Southport citizens for attending meetings and giving comment. All of us can maybe help those who don't know much about the plan to try to understand its origin, its meaning, and its implementation strategies. Are there any other changes or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the December minutes with the corrections made as noted?
So moved.
Thank you, Will. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
given that I haven't been sworn in yet, nor was at the meeting, I'd like to be on the record as abstaining.
Thank you. So noted. Item E is the approval of tonight's agenda. You were also issued the agenda in advance of this meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Will. And a second?
Second.
Thank you so much. Fred, any final discussion? All opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously there as well. Before we move to our next item on the agenda, I want to make just a bit of a comment about the recent death of Richard Dick Sloan, an alternate member of this planning board from 2017 to 2019, and then a full member from 2019 until the health issues that caused his resignation in 2024. Coach, as he was known to so many, was active in many areas of Southport from the time he and his beloved wife Diane relocated here in 2004. Dick's obsession, his career, was sports. He was a coach and a mentor to many. He carried that talent forward into his time on this planning board. Dick was a quiet man, but when he made comment, you knew that he meant what he said. Many folks that are quiet and listen more than they speak can be quite effective. Good managers and good leadership. Dick became a friend to me when I began my service on this board, and I got to see just how respected he was in our town. He and I worked together on the Historical Society's Christmas Homes Tour a couple years ago. He dressed as an elf and wore a dancing Christmas tree hat. Dick was active, fun-loving, accident-prone, and ever the encourager. He will be missed by Southport and by this board. We extend our sympathies and our very best to Diane and their precious pup child, Abby, for we know how much they too already miss him. We're pleased Diane saw fit to be with us tonight for our tribute, and we thank you for coming. So, I have a couple things to present in appreciation from this board and the city. If you'll come to the podium with me, Shug. You'll make me cry, don't you do it.
Oh, stop.
Okay. We want you to accept Dick's nameplate during his longtime service here with the planning board and a plant that we've got to remind you of the life that he helped bring to all of us in Southport. We love you, and we thank you for sharing him with us for this time. Thank you, Wendell. Now, on with the swearing in of new members. For the remainder of the board, I'm pleased that after 5+ months, we have new members to install. I'll ask, and this is in alpha order, Larry Ashley, John Beauvais, Bob Lambert, and Kevin Lachlan to come to the podium for their swearing in. And anyone that they've brought with them, we'll have them come up individually when it's their turn.
If you will raise your right hand, put your left hand on the Bible, and I'm going to read it, and if you'll agree and say I do after it. I, Lawrence Ashley, do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not consistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a member of Southport, North Carolina Planning Board, so help me God.
I do.
Welcome. Is it John Beauvais? Beauvais, okay. All right. I, John Beauvais, do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a member of the Southport, North Carolina Planning Board, so help me God.
I do.
Okay, Mr. Lambert. If you'll raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. I, Robert Lambert, do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a member of the Southport, North Carolina Planning Board, so help me God.
I will.
Welcome. And last, the photo bomber. Right hand up, left hand on the Bible. I, Kevin Lachlan, do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a member of the Southport, North Carolina Planning Board, so help me God.
I do.
Welcome.
That's a lot of swearing and handshaking all at once, isn't it?
But it's good swearing.
That's right. For all of our benefits, I recently spoke with City Clerk Saldo, and I understand that we and all of the city's boards and commissions will, in the near future, be having some formalized training about our mission, our responsibilities, our processes, and what we do and don't do. And we'll look forward to that, Noah. I'll say here too that I saw Tori gave our new members copies of the UDO tonight already, and that in future, members can request printed copies of your meeting packets if you wish from Tori. You can make arrangements to go by City Hall and pick that up from her. She is probably hesitant to give out her telephone number, but I'm doing it. It's 910-457-7900 and extension 1009. Our next item on the agenda is our officer elections, and I'm going to ask Board Vice Chair Will Hewitt to oversee this agenda item.
Okay. Once a year, we get together, and as part of our duties, we elect our officers. So part of my duty is to call for the election of the chair of this board. So what I'm going to do is ask for nominations for the chair, confirm the nominee's willingness to serve as the chair, and ask for a second for nomination. Close nominations after all names received and read each name and ask for a show of hands of both yes or no votes. So, having said that, do I have any nominations for the chair of the board?
I would like to nominate Sue Hodgen.
Okay, we have one nomination for Sue Hodgen. Thank you.
Do you need a second with that? No.
Yes, we,
And then I'll second that motion,
okay, second.
that nomination, sorry.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for chair of the board? Okay. Then I need to ask if Sue, where'd you go? Come on back.
I did run.
You did run. I need to ask that if you are elected as the chair of the board, will you continue to serve as in that position?
I will.
Okay. Then having said that, her willingness to do so, do I have a show of hands as to a yes or no? Yes for chair, please raise your hands. And any no votes? Having none, then you are unanimously reelected. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Will, and I appreciate everyone's confidence in my selection. We'll move on now to the election for vice chair, and I will recognize Will Hewitt for a statement before we accept nominations.
All righty. As you all, well, some of you may know, I'm actually going to be selling my house in Southport. Now, whether I live in I'm going to be living here for a while, but I didn't think it would be fair to be in a position where I may be pulled away for something, and I couldn't give my full attention to the board that I would need to. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to seek the vice chair seat. And once that is, but I will continue to serve out my term until June, which I will be living in Southport at least till June. But after that, I'm not sure where my endeavors may carry me. So hopefully they'll keep me here for a while, but we'll see. But either way, it's been a pleasure, and it was nice. I wish Diane was still here because she didn't know this, but Dick Sloan was the one who nominated me, and Donnie Joyner. So anyway, I wish I could have told her that before she left. But anyway, I will not be seeking the nomination. So please think among yourselves as to who it would be. I have one I'd like to share, but I'll wait on the chair to call for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Will, for sharing that and your admirable statement about continuing to serve. We appreciate that. I will at this time call for nominations for vice chair.
Madam Chair, I would like to nominate Kevin Lachlan to take my place as vice chair.
We do have a nomination on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Fred. Mr. Lachlan, or if elected, are you willing to serve in this capacity?
I would, Your Honor.
Thank you so much. Are there other nominations? Then I'll ask for a motion that we close the nominations at this time.
Close.
Thank you, and is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. With one nomination in place, I will ask for the record that we have a vote. All those in favor of Kevin Lachlan's election as vice chair, show of hands, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you so much. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you.
All right, item I is public comment. Do I hear a motion, please, to move into the public comment period?
So moved.
Thank you, Fred, and a second?
Second.
Thank you. Will, we do have a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Madam Deputy Clerk, please begin calling the names of those that signed up to speak.
We have Craig Blanks.
And Craig, you know the routine, but if you will, state your name and address for us before you begin speaking. Appreciate it.
Craig Blanks, General Manager of Frying Pan, American Fish, the Two Houses, Yoga Dock, and 102 South Castle. I'm here tonight on the parking overlay text amendment. And I got to thinking of something. I believe, Will, you got nominated for the board the first time I came to a planning board meeting over this parking and rezoning. And by my math, that was sometime in May of 19. So for over 5 years, I've been through committee meetings and drug around over parking in the yacht basin. Everybody in town knows we need the parking. According to zoning, it's not legal. So let's don't overcomplicate this anymore and have 10 different committees where everybody's talking, and it's real simple. Myself, Jim Cherico, and Paul Swenson said we would take the 4 lots. I said at the Alderman meeting I thought there were 3, but Cherico's lot is actually 2. We will border them like I've done Frying Pan and the Yoga lot. We will put gravel down in those when the gravel becomes available. Right now there is no 57 stone in North or South Carolina. North Carolina's bought it all up for the roads. That's it. As far as the setbacks and the right-of-ways, if the city wants to plant shrubberies and bushes and stuff, go right ahead. That's city property. We own it, but the city's got the right to do whatever they like to it. But since May of 19, we've been beating this dead horse. Please push this through, get it to the alderman, let it get voted in so I can fix the parking lot before the season starts. I had to put the remilled asphalt in 102 South Castle because I bought the last of the 57 stone that was put in the Yoga lot. I don't care who parks on our lots. I've never cared who parks on our lots. Southport needs the parking. Let's just make it legal and push it through, please. Thank you.
Next.
That was all.
Do we have anyone with email statements?
No, ma'am. No further
Anyone
comment.
here that didn't sign up but would like to address the board? Okay, there being none, do I hear a motion to end public comment period? Thank you. Will, and a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. There is a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. As we advance into our agenda, I want all members to feel comfortable asking questions for clarifications. We've all been where you're sitting right now, so between staff and us old-timers, we'll do our best to answer your inquiries. On to item J then, old business. Number 1 is major site plan, 101 East Moore Street, Bullfrog Corner. It's pages 9 through 38 of your packets. Mo, I see you're leading this discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Whoa, excuse me.
Madam Chair, before we get started, could I have a point of clarification? As a new member, this is a continuation of a public hearing. As a newly sworn member for a hearing that's happened sometime before, am I allowed to participate and vote on it?
Absolutely. This is basically new information for our new members. First time you're hearing this presentation.
Okay.
And as we advance through it, we'll clarify that. Thank you, Larry.
Great, thank you very much.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. And I'd like to welcome the 3 new board members. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you being here and looking forward to working with you. This evening's first agenda item, is the major site plan at 101 East Moore. And just to go over the process, a major site plan is an administrative approval that staff will review, bring it to the planning board, and the planning board has the final decision on the process or the application itself. The 160D, as well as our ordinance, says that if the site plan meets all of the standards of the UDO and the ordinance, the planning board shall approve such, or the application. So I just want to kind of give you an idea of this type of the decision that is being made. And then once there is approval from the planning board, then the applicant is able to go forward for their building permits. So I want to, for the benefit of the new members, I'm going to do a little deeper description of the project than previously, so they can get a good, clear understanding of the project. So the proposed project is at 101 East Moore, also known as Bullfrog Corner. That is the existing retail establishment that is at that corner of Howe and Moore Streets. And the zoning is Central Business District. So that means there's no minimum lot size and no setbacks, and no parking requirements for existing except for residential units. And that would be 1 parking space for each dwelling unit that is proposed for a mixed-use proposal. Excuse me. So the overview, the original application was brought to the city in August of 2022, and it was deemed complete by Wes McLeod, who was a contract planner from the Cape Fear Council of Governments, who was stepping in and working with the city while there was a gap in city staff. The UDO standards at the time of application are going to be used, and this application is subject to those. So therefore, they have proposed a 3-story mixed-use building. It is going to be 40 feet high, and there will be 4 residential units above the existing retail space. And the current retail building will remain. It will not be demolished, and a new building will be built. So what we have here is the original site plan that's submitted. It has 5 parking spaces on the existing lot and the adjacent lot, which is 114 North Howe Street, which is allowed by the UDO. If you cannot provide all of your off-street parking on your lot, you are allowed to use a adjacent property within 400 feet of the entrance of your property. So that was presented. The parking was provided, but it did not meet all of the standards and parking requirements within the UDO at the time. So there was a review committee that was composed, and when they met, they requested updated parking configurations. They needed to show ingress and egress from the building because the parking was stacked right against the building, and that was one of the issues and part of the requirements for the standards themselves. There were, the trash receptacles were not on the site plan, and there need to be handicap parking details added to the site plan. This was also a rendering that was provided at the time of the application. It's not required, but the applicant provided this to staff. So after the review committee requested some new configurations, let's get the door, let's get the cars moving. So they addressed the ingress and egress and the parking receptacles, but there were still questions about the parking lot design itself, and making sure that they were meeting the standards. The UDO says that you cannot back out of a parking lot into a right-of-way. You must come out of the parking lot face first for safety purposes. Also, there were some questions about the dimensions of the parking stalls themselves, and there was not again, the handicap was not delineated on this. So the review committee mentioned those, and at that time they requested a maneuverability study or analysis to show that the parking configuration in this iteration of the site plan would be able to make the turns and pull out of the drive facing forward. The applicant went forward with the parking study, analysis, maneuverability, and it was sent to our city engineer, Tom Zelenik, for review, and after his review, he said that it was not acceptable. There are 10 to 30 point turns for each one of the vehicles trying to leave the parking spaces, and the engineer specifically noted that certain conditions were not included in his analysis, which included opening of car doors next to the building. So that was the ingress and egress, opening the car doors, and a couple other factors that were not included that could have been to do this. So without backing out, the applicant was not able to meet the minimum standards of the UDO, which was section 3.14B, that cars, again, cannot pull back into the public right-of-way. At that time, the applicant's next only step would be going forward for a variance for relief from that section to allow residents to back out. So the applicant did apply for a variance from the Board of Adjustment, and it was granted in January of 2024. It was conditionally granted, with the conditions being that the conditions on the approval of the major site plan itself, and that there would be installation of visual cues for both vehicles leaving the parking lot and pedestrians on the street. So the application was back to the planning board in April of 2024 with the site plan that we have here. It has 4 angled parking spaces that meet the setbacks, meet the stall requirements, and meet the access to the parking stalls. So all of those requirements are met with the relief from the variance, allowing the cars to back out of the parking lot. This was brought to the planning board at the April meeting, as I stated, and it was sent back to committee due to safety procedures, or safety concerns, I apologize, and there were some procedural issues that were considered with the final order had not been signed at that time from the variance itself. So that's where we were. So the committee met again, and the planning board met with the applicant and the city manager and myself and talked through and they had spoken with Ben Hughes, who was a Division III engineer for NCDOT, speaking of the concerns that they had for the project and the backing out and just the number of pedestrians and cars that are on North House Street at that particular site. And he offered a new option to consider for the applicant, for the city, which was to close the driveway and provide on-street parking, since there is a need for parking within the city. While it would not provide parking exclusively for the units in this, it would give needed public parking that was required. So if you would look at these pictures you'll see his kind of renderings that he'd put together. On the bottom is the existing drive now. I will mention that since this picture has been taken, there is a fence up at the rear of this property, but it'll show you the red, will show you the curb and drive that has been added and the drive that is closed, and then the new striping and it would be approximately 4 new parking spaces on street in this area to meet that. The applicant agreed to this new option. Again, it would require another variance. So the applicant will have to go back to the Board of Adjustment to get a variance again from the parking section standards of 3.14, which would then give him relief from having any parking at all for his residential units. So this was the site plan that was provided to the committee in November. It shows the closed driveway and the parking spaces, and the applicant would be then responsible for installing the curb and the striping and get the NCDOT encroachments. So the committee, I apologize, I wasn't sure if I had another. The committee has reviewed this, still has some concerns, and they have not provided a recommendation for the full board. I will state that upon the review of the latest site plan, if granted the new variance that is on the Board of Adjustment's January agenda, then this project and application will meet all of the standards of the UDO. So staff you could consider a conditional approval upon the granting of the new variance. I will leave this up, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And the applicant is here if there are any questions for him as well.
So let me back up, Mo, to that last statement that you made. You said staff could grant conditional approval.
No, ma'am. I was stating that you could vote to have a conditional, that the staff has found that otherwise all of the standards have been met from the UDO other than the parking.
Okay, so there's a couple things I'd note here from your presentation. The planning board did not meet with the city manager and staff and the applicant. Our review committee met with them, but this planning board has not, as you rightfully said, received the committee's recommendation in order to make a vote on this. So I want it made clear, our committee did not speak for the planning board for this applicant to take subsequent action on it. We don't assume that responsibility to speak for the planning board. It's a lot to put out all at once. I will say, and I've said this before, I'm concerned, and we've noted this in committee meetings as well, the precedent that it sets to absolve an applicant of any parking that is required in the UDO for mixed-use dwellings. And that is what I want the members of the board to understand, that is what would be being done here, taking away any parking requirements for this applicant whatsoever. And to me, it's an erosion of city ordinance to allow that to be done. I appreciate, Mo, you're giving the kind of what's next commentary at the end of that. I was going to ask for that as well. Are there committee members or members of the board itself that would want to make comment?
Madam Chairman? Mo, just clarification, please. At one point, I think you stated that the applicant would agree to the option that was propounded by the, quote, committee, not the planning board, because when there was a meeting with him, it was to discuss potential options to try to work it out amicably and then bring it to the full board. And so to say he agreed to the option, it excludes the option that asked for green space. Green space was a part of the option we propounded, and that's been excluded, and I think it's excluded in his application for variance. And there needs to be an amendment to his variance that he applied for that's coming up at the end of this month, where he said the planning board recommended it. That's not correct. The planning board has not had a formal vote on it to make that recommendation. And I just want to make that clarified. Okay, thank you, Mo. Oh, and there's one other thing, so if I may. And I need your advice again on this, Mo, and maybe the city attorney. it seems, well, things are pending before the planning board. Then, I think in this case, an updated site plan was recommended to be filed. Before it's filed, an application for a variance is filed before the planning board has even acted on that, or I even think the applicant had. And then they go to the Board of Variance. I think we need to amend the procedural process that while something is pending before the planning board, that then the Board of Adjustments should not have jurisdiction over it, so to speak, and vice versa. I think out of respect for both boards, because both are essential to what gets done in this city. So I think I'd ask if you could check with the city attorney on that, what can be done as far as any amendment to the UDO for future, so we don't have this complexity. Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions?
If I could,
Larry?
Madam Chair. Mo, just so I understand, the plan or the proposal is to have 4 different apartments
Correct.
with how many bedrooms? 8 bedrooms? Did I count that right? 2 for each apartment?
Yes.
How were the number of parking spaces determined based on those 4 apartments?
That is a standard of the UDO, and the UDO was updated to include those numbers for mixed use in 2020, so I was not part of that discussion.
So for 4 apartments, you would require 5 parking spaces?
4 parking spaces.
4 parking spaces?
Yes, sir. So 1 per each.
To me, it just seems a little light, considering that most people have 2 vehicles, and 2.5 people who generally live in a house or an apartment. So I think the numbers are, when you look at whether it's 4, I'm sure it's pretty much closer to 10. But the other question I have, part of this includes closing off the right-of-way. Is that correct? Is it a right-of-way, or is it just an alley that has no? Who owns that?
It's all of the private owners of the lots. It's just happened to be a historical cut-through.
Yeah.
There are no easements, no right-of-ways. It's just a drive-through, so.
So is the person on the left side provided anything in writing saying that they're okay with that being closed off?
I have not received it from the business owner, but the property owner is the same as for this. So both.
Okay. Oh, so
both
they
are
own the same. They
yes,
both own
sir.
it? Okay, fair enough.
Yes, sir.
So I also read through the parking survey and the parking study that was done and the city paid for. And one of the things they determined was cars, on the most part, will park down in that area for about 2 hours at a time, and that there was a need for additional parking or to ensure that the parking was actually turned over, because you've got employees that are parking there, as well as, you know, people coming in and visiting the different stores. How do you guarantee that those parking spaces are going to be, are they going to be reserved for the apartment?
No, these will be public parking spaces for anyone's use.
Okay. So there's an advantage to creating 3 or 4 additional parking spaces. Okay. I'm just curious how you could actually reserve those. And the other question I had that I reached out to you on, I don't know if you got an answer about overnight parking on Howe Street. Is there any answer to that?
Yes, I spoke with the police department, and they are looking into that. For overnight parking, there is an older ordinance that says that you cannot park between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m., but I don't believe that that's ever been enforced. I know that there are at least one mixed-use property that I know of that has to park on the street for their parking. And I would hope that if someone was not able to drive, that they had to leave their car somewhere, that the city would encourage that.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry. These spaces that will now be public parking, is there any need to designate any of those parking spaces as handicapped?
I would have to consult with the NCDOT and the ADA requirements before I don't have that answer, but I can find it for you, absolutely.
And I continue to go back to, we're talking presentation here. This is not the recommendation that's come from the review committee. This is not what we're acting on tonight. I would also say that folks should remember that if, let's say, this proposal does go through and there are 4 new parking spaces created, it's really a wash, folks, because the 4 units above Bullfrog, those folks are going to have to park somewhere, whether it's in those 4 spaces that are right at that building or wherever they choose to park. Those units will still take up 4 parking spaces somewhere in town. Are there any other questions or comments on this presentation?
One question. Where are the trash receptacles now that the new spots kind of block off the driveway?
So that they're over here, back in this rear corner of the property. And then they would just be brought forward, so they're rolling carts, so they would just be brought to the curb like all other businesses within the CBD.
Okay, rolling carts.
That is what you meant, their trash receptacles for the businesses? Okay. So, any other comments or questions? So this submission and information, though it's not new to some of us sitting here, it is new to half of this board. Tonight's the first time hearing it, the background and this presentation. The decision about the submission is resting fully with this planning board. As Mo explained, it's termed an administrative decision. That means it does not go to the alderman for further discussion and the ultimate decision. The buck stops here with us to proceed correctly and make the best decision for the whole of the city. I believe there may have been conversation before the meeting and the thought that the board would be taking a vote tonight on the submission, but I believe it to be unfair to our new members to have, what's it been, 10 minutes introduction and absorption of this information and then call for a vote. Our new members should have time to absorb the information and bring back questions for staff and the review committee. The review committee is myself, Kevin Lachlan, and Fred Fiss. We also will need a minimum of 1 additional meeting to consider members' comments and finalize the recommendation back to this full board. Only when that committee's recommendation is received and discussed should this body be called to vote on this submission. So I'm also understanding the explanation that was given about the new submission on the January 28th Board of Adjustments agenda, and our review committee and this body should want to review and discuss any activity resultant from that request. So with that reasoning, can I get a motion to table this item for additional further review committee work and further discussion at the February Planning Board meeting? I'm sorry, would you like to, I heard you. Would you like to make a statement? Yes, ma'am, please do come forward. I'm sorry. And if you'll introduce yourself for our new members. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Amy Schaefer. I'm an attorney on behalf of the applicant who is also with me tonight. I just want to point out that this project, I know you've had it for 10 minutes, but it has been going on for 29 months for a by right development. And I do appreciate that you guys are going to have some training soon, and I really appreciate that. I want to point out there are 3 types of zoning decisions. There's a legislative decision, and that is policy making. Only the elected board can do that. There are quasi-judicial decisions, and that's when there's discretion involved, when there are things that are not objective standards. And those are heard through a quasi-judicial kind of evidentiary, people are sworn, you get testimony, there's cross-examining. And then there's an administrative review, what this is. And that is when there are non-discretionary standards that are applied. Respectfully, I think your code perhaps doesn't fully comply with state statutes on that issue, because the board, under the code, it says you have discretion and you can place conditions. That being said, the April site plan that was submitted with the variance, my client and I 100% believe that that meets your code requirements, that that would fully comply with all of your standards. But when we received comments from the committee that they were still concerned about any safety, which frankly should have been addressed at the Board of Adjustment if there had been additional concerns and that evidence was not presented. My client met with the committee, and there was talk about perhaps closing that off and having no backing out. So my client said, okay, I get it, let's submit that. Please understand this new plan is not meant to be a replacement of the April site plan, it's an alternative. We fully believe that if we ask for an up or down vote on the April 2024 plan, and even if this board denied it, we fully believe that either the Board of Adjustment or a court would approve that based on compliance with the code. But my client wants to work with the board and so submitted this. Commissioner, I know you had asked about green space. That was off-site. There's no room to do green space on-site. And as Ms. Meehan said, you don't have setbacks, and there are no green space or open space requirements for a site plan. So therefore, we would allege that any condition of green space would be an illegal condition by this board. So we would ask for a vote, understanding what the chair said, but we would just like to make our wishes known and to clarify our position on the two different site plans. And Andrew or I are happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant or Ms. Schaefer?
If I could, through the chair, could you go over what the application was that you mentioned in September? I mean, sorry, in April? That
Yes.
you said complied?
Sorry. I'm not sure how to bring it back up. And this is in your packet. Ms. Meehan did provide that. So this is the one with the angled parking on the site, so, or on the adjacent property. So basically, what happens is staff and the technical review committee look at a site plan and they say, what are our standards? Do we have setbacks? No. Okay, this meets that. What are our height requirements? Does that meet that? Yes. And they provide that to you all. If there is any issue in your code which does not meet a standard, a setback, a parking standard, not use, you can't get a variance for use, but any other standard, then that is what the Board of Adjustment and the variance is for. And when you go to the Board of Adjustment, you have to show certain findings of fact, certain evidence you have to present and cross-examine. It's sworn testimony. And so what Mr. Lanning did was he said, okay, other than the parking issue, our site plan complies with all of the code. So let's go to the Board of Adjustment and see if we can get a variance for that backing out. He did that. That variance, in our opinion, checks the box for this should be approved. But because the board had some additional concerns, that's when he submitted the alternative plan. But it is not a new plan. It's not meant to replace. It's an alternative. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I would also mention, Larry, when that variance was granted and Ms. Schaefer noted there was no evidence presented about there being any safety concerns. We did not have, as in the city, for the planning board, we did not have legal representation at that adjustments hearing to present that evidence for us. Anyone else have any comments or questions for the applicant? Schaefer, appreciate it. Any other comments in general? I'll revert back to my ask from before with the reasoning that was presented. Can I get a motion to table this item for additional review, committee work, and further discussion at our February meeting? So moved. Thank you, Fred. Is there a second? Thank you, Larry. There is a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. I appreciate that. Item number 2, we'll move on, is the bed and breakfast text amendment, pages 39 to 46 in your packet. And Wendell, I'm showing you as the lead for this item.
That's right. Good evening, and thank you, Madam Chair, board members. A couple months ago, staff was directed by the Planning Board to form a committee and decide on an appropriate tax amendment that could potentially allow existing bed and breakfasts the ability to host specialized events such as weddings. In the 2 meetings since, the committee discussed a couple of options and how to move forward. The following is the result of some ideas that were discussed. We bring them forward for the full board's review and direction. Before delving into the possible text amendment, however, I would like to provide a brief background of what brought about this occasion.
Wendell, can I stop you just a minute? Larry, can you see the screen okay? Is that all right? We've always had issues with the podium versus the screen. We fight it constantly. Thank you, Wendell.
You're very welcome. In the summer of 2024, an applicant was granted a special use permit for the purposes of operating a bed and breakfast. As required, the applicant brought forward a management plan. However, it included in the B&B as operating an event space to host weddings. Unfortunately, our UDO at the time, and still, does not offer land use to give permission to operate an event space in such an occasion. At an October Planning Board session, a committee was formed consisting of staff members and members of the board. While working with the committee, we made note of a couple of obstacles. One, how do we grant existing businesses the ability to host specialized occasions without drastically affecting their adjacent neighbors? 2, how do we ensure that said events do not adversely affect residential zoning districts? And 3, how do we ensure that safety, capacity, and emergency services are not spread too thin? What they come up with are 2 options to bring forward for the full board to review and to provide feedback. Our first option is to create a combination of an accessory use standard and a permit. The use, specialized events, would be defined as being a commercial venture held in non-religious venues wherein the event is secondary to the venue's primary land use and would be required to adhere to specific land use standards. Table 3.1 of the UDO would be amended to reflect that this option would serve as an accessory use. Please note that the permitted zones for this use mirror those of the bed and breakfasts. The new accessory use standards would be located in section 3.6.Q of the UDO. In concert with the new accessory land use, a temporary use permit would need to be established. The utility of the permit is to ensure that all appropriate agencies, such as City Fire, would be aware of the proposed event and can establish capacity standards. Other benefits of a temporary use permit include staff being able to administratively control the number of specialized events in any given time period and limit the number of events hosted by any one specific establishment within a given time period. Specific use requirements for specialized events reflect the need to acquire the temporary use permit, as well as ensure that issues such as noise, signage, alcohol consumption, and other issues are managed appropriately. Option 2 would be similar to option 1, but instead of being an accessory land use, specialized events would be categorized as a non-residential use and would not require a temporary use permit. This option affords the market the chance to present an events venue as a primary land use. Also, you can see that the definition is amended to reflect the difference between option 1 and option 2. Table 3.1 would be amended to reflect that option 2 would serve as a non-residential use. The zoning districts permitted for this option are more restrictive due to the nature of this option being strictly commercial. Option 2's use standards are like option 1's, except that they are absent of the temporary use permit requirements. The events that do not trigger the need for either option are those that are non-commercial and are already permitted and reviewed by a separate agency, such as Southport's 4th of July Festival. Things like birthday parties, family gatherings. We're not asking to create a special land use so that we can monitor and permit such things. We're asking to create this tax amendment for the purpose of anything that's going to be considered as commercial, as a commercial venue. This concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions regarding it or the staff report. Moving forward, we look forward to your guys' inputs and potentially either creating another commission or moving from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendell. Maybe it's just me looking at the packet, but I'm looking at page 39. In your presentation, it was clear the two options that were drawn up, but I couldn't really understand the two options in our packets. And again, maybe it's just me, and I'll admit that clearly.
No, it's not you. That is a result of my own failure there. I totally dropped the ball in writing the staff report and didn't make it very clear. So it wasn't until I started practicing the presentation yesterday, after the packet had been sent, that Director Moheen had mentioned, hey, look, this isn't coherent. So I do apologize for that. And then moving forward, that will not be a problem.
Well, I thank you for that and the confirmation that I've not totally lost it.
No.
I wonder about that often anymore. So it's going to be hard for us to really consider this for a vote tonight without seeing all of that, right? To try to understand it the best, because it looks like like say in our packet that there's one option that staff was recommending and it kind of rolled out from there. So just based on what we've heard tonight in this presentation, does anyone have questions for Wendell or things that staff may need to look at?
Wendell, at the last Board of Adjustments meeting, there was a specific case for events at a B&B. Is there any relative information that came out of that would relate to what we're talking to tonight?
I don't believe so, sir. I think we're talking, sorry, my last Board of Adjustment meeting was of a special use permit for something else, so I'm just trying to remember. No, I think the case that you're talking about is what ultimately led to this, not even a proposal, but this notion that our UDO does not actually provide this means of event space.
So in a nutshell, what was the issue presented to the Board of Adjustments and what was their decision?
The Board of Adjustment voted on granting the applicant the special use permit to operate a bed and breakfast. Now, part of that special use permit is a list of specific use standards, and one of those standards is making sure that there's a management plan to operate the bed and breakfast. In that management plan, they wanted to use their bed and breakfast to host wedding venues. And that's when the board was like, hey, look, everything looks great. We accept what you want to do here, except that. And that's when we got the word saying we need to explore possibly doing a tax amendment and going from there. When we met in committee, things that were discussed were how do we allow such things like a bed and breakfast host specialized events and keep the nature of, say, residential zoning districts, and make sure that, you know, emergency services are not being taxed too thin because multiple events are being held throughout the city, things like that. But to your point, sir, that one Board of Adjustment case is what kind of sparked this fire. They weren't, though this isn't an application that was submitted by them, this was direction from the planning board.
So for that particular application that came through, they were asking, part of what they were planning on doing was to host weddings and parties there. So was that denied for them for that particular part of it?
That's
and the
correct.
remainder of that permit was granted then, is that right?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
If I could, Madam Chair. So Wendell, my daughter's getting married. I want to save money. Can I?
Mazel tov.
Yeah, thank you. Can she get married? I live in a residential area. Does she need a permit to get married? She's not going along with it as much as I've tried, but would she need a permit for a residential area? Like,
If this residence that's hosting a wedding is operating as a commercial activity to host events such as charging your daughter money, then yes.
Okay.
That's the catalyst here. How do we make sure that commercial activity is being safeguarded versus your kid wanting to have a birthday party or a quinceañera, or you want to celebrate another specialized occasion? If that's just something that you're going to do because you want to do a family reunion,
right.
and it's not a commercialized activity, this does not apply.
Okay. So you would need any kind of a permit or something like that for the backyard?
No, not
right.
like this.
Great, thank you. I'm going to keep on trying.
You got a great pond in the backyard. It would be a great backdrop that would work. I can see that working. Anyone else have any questions for staff? I'm going to, since this was not what we've seen tonight, I'm going to ask for a motion that we table this as well so that we can get this information brought back to us to be able to view what we're seeing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So can I get a motion that we table this conversation again for next month's meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Larry. And is there a second? Thank you, Bob. There is a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Wendell. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board.
And Tori, I'll mention on this just before we get to next month's meeting, if we're going to hear this again, there's a couple typos on the consistency statement. If we're going to take action on it, we need to get those corrected on there, okay? And I'll get with you on those as we prepare those for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Right, the next item up is number 3, the parking overlay text amendment, pages 47 to 50. Mo, if you do the staff presentation for this. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, so this is an item continued from the December 19th meeting to include input with the new board members and discussion. As you know, the Yacht Basin is a destination for locals and visitors alike, and there is no formalized parking, and the property owners have graciously allowed people to park on their lots, but as mentioned in public comment, it is not illegal use, land use for it, and there are no standards, so it can be a safety and aesthetic issues at the same time for everyone. So as you can see, there were several different studies that have come within the last 4 or 5 years. There was the Yacht Basin Committee that had recommendations for an overlay. There's the Yacht Basin Mobility Study that talked about parking in these spaces. The parking study that was just completed by Walker Consultants spoke about considered an overlay in this area, and also in the comprehensive plan that's hopefully in one of its last drafts that also has action items to consider an overlay district for this area. So as you can see, that's not a pointer. These are the 4 lots here. So this little L-shaped part of the parcels. And you can see here that you can see where people have been using these lots while they are not exactly approved for parking, but we've been using them. But they are zoned R10. So the overlay would allow the parking with some standards available, but it wouldn't preclude any of the uses underneath. So if someone didn't want to do the parking at some point, they wouldn't have to. They could still use the underlining zoning and uses that are allowed as part of that. So those are the 4 risks, and they have historically allowed it. So let's see. So again, here are just some more photos from the street view, as well as another one from a later time in the year showing parking there. So again, there's a lot of right-of-way there, and having some formalized parking there would definitely make a difference for the users of the lot and those just aesthetically looking. Okay, so there were some considerations from the original Yacht Basin Committee that were very structured, that had followed the UDO now and the parking lot standards. So there was a lot of surfacing requirements and interior landscaping and circulation types of things. And after talking with the property owners and hearing public hearing over the last couple weeks, I think that going to a different standard where you just say that parking is allowed, but also provide a simpler surfacing option, and then requiring maintenance of those and maybe some bordering. So it's really more about providing safe parking to the visitors of the Yacht Basin, rather than trying to turn it into a huge parking extravaganza and a lot of cost for the property owners that we're asking to allow the public to park in these areas. So I had provided some newer language that read just, the surfacing would be gravel or some pervious pavers, and we could add border to that, or bumper, wooden bumpers if you choose, rather than the more structured that I had provided, or actually the Yacht Basin Committee had kind of formulated those from earlier. So I'm happy to discuss it now with the board, or if you'd like to go to a committee so you can speak with the property owners. I did invite the property owners to this meeting. As Craig is here and 2 of them were not able to make it to this evening's meeting. But if we do go to a committee, I definitely want to make sure that they are invited to those, and we can make arrangements that they can all be available. Yes, sir.
I have permission from other 3 property owners to speak to them tonight.
Okay. So.
We'll note for the record that Craig Blanks indicated that he had permission from both of the other property owners, since you're not at the mic is the reason I'm saying it, Craig, that he had permission from the other 2 owners to speak on their behalf tonight.
Yes, so if I may, the newest text that was provided in your packet says that off-site parking facilities are allowed in the areas shown on the official zoning map as the Yacht Basin parking overlay, with the following standards. Surfacing materials shall be limited to pervious pavers and number 57 driveway slate gravel. When available, perimeters of the parking lot will be delineated with wood borders. Concrete or asphalt surfacing is prohibited in the overlay district. And then just that the off-street areas shall be properly maintained. So that's the newer verbiage. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have during discussion.
Does anyone have any comments? Will?
Yeah, actually. Having grown up here and gone to the Yacht Basin before any of these restaurants ever showed up, while there were still fish houses down there, I can tell you that big hole, what we're looking at, that's where Southport Marine Mart was. And there was always a running joke about that building, that if you wanted to take one of Larry's boats out, you just waited for the tide to come in and you just floated it off the showroom. There's really no use for that except parking, in all seriousness, because anything built in there, unless it's built up on pylons, can flood. And I sympathize with all the people down there that we do need parking down there, and we're looking at a full block of it. And allowing parking in those areas would also give us the opportunity for the on-street parking spaces that we have that could be repurposed as both handicap or somebody with mobility hindrances, that it would be safe for them to use those sidewalks. But if they're being taken up, then basically they're looking for a parking space in a mud hole. And I know that that the property owners would if they're going to grade that out, they're going to want it to be something that would be beneficial for their business, but also it's going to be beneficial for us as a community. So another season of not having something done is just going to be one more nightmare that's going to hurt us, I think, in the future. This is I think it's a easily solvable problem, but we just need the wording for it to do it. But I think it's something that we can accomplish relatively soon. If I'm wrong, let me know. But you're on behalf of all three, and this is something that's gonna benefit Southport regardless. And I don't see any houses or anything going in there, but I wouldn't have a problem with it myself.
Madam Chairman, I concur with Will's statements, but I think to expedite it and to do it properly, because a lot of us are new to this topic. I know the gentleman said this has been going on for quite some time, but most of us weren't aware of that. And so I think I agree with his point. Something needs to be done, and not with haste, but appropriately and expeditiously. So I would recommend we form a committee, and that committee comes up with a recommendation by the next board meeting, that we can meet with the owners and get exactly a detail as to what they want to do as far as the grading or the gravel. And if we have enough information, move forth. Fred.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, come on.
We'll put 8x8s all the way around here, just like we did. This lot right here is commercial. This is Paul and Maria that own Provision Company.
Oh, that's okay. But that's the zoning map on there, right there.
Okay, either way.
Yeah.
You got this lot, and I thought this was one, but this is actually two lots. This is Jim Cherico's. This is ours, this is Paul's. These are the only residential lots in the Yacht Basin that are being talked about. Through a lot of trial and error at Frying Pan, I put the 8x8s, run 5-foot sticks of rebar in them, and screwed them together. I don't lose them during storms. The 57 stone doesn't wash out during storms. Previous proposals have talked about berms and trees and all this that won't last through one storm. The highest water I've ever seen in the Yacht Basin in the 12 years I've been here has been about right there. Then got plenty of videos from the Frying Pan showing that. But again, I'm trying to make this simple and not overcomplicate it. We'll do what I've already done and proven works. Though we don't have to rebuild it every time a storm comes in, unlike American Fish, I've had to totally rebuild twice. Frying Pan doesn't get much damage because that's the most over-engineered building in this town. But it's real simple. We'll run a double row 8x8s right through there. We'll put in 57 stuff. Put curbs in, actual concrete curbs to block it so there's no washout. Oop, I didn't do that, did I? Sorry.
Yeah, it's a touchscreen.
Oh. That's all we're looking to do. If this parking gets shut down, we've never officially given anybody permission to use the parking. We've let the movie companies use it from time to time, because if they don't, they take up Castle and Moore, blocks off access to the businesses. All the people that are coming here will back up into the residential areas, which they do on holiday weekends anyway. So again, I'm saying, let's don't overcomplicate this. Will's been here, Sue's been here, most folks in this room been here on a holiday weekend or mainly through the summer. I think the last parking consultant group that was in here taking tag numbers down illegally says there's 400 and some parking spaces right here. I don't block my parking off for anybody. I don't care if they park at me and go to Cherico's, Fishy Fishy, Edgewater, Bobo's Boat Tour, Provision Company, Bullfrog Corner, Ocean Outfitters. Anytime we have a festival, this lot fills up first. We're all for it. But this horse has been getting beat for 5 years. Let's put it to bed. Whatever wants to be done in the setbacks, the city is more than welcome to do. But I can tell you it'll cost me at least $30,000 that I'm willing to spend to border that parking lot to make it safer. And another part of that 5-year battle was getting street lights put here, because this was the darkest street in Southport. Can I answer any other questions for the board? Thank you.
Before you go through the chair, so I just want to make sure I understand, you and the other property owners are in favor of this?
So after the November 12th, 15th Alderman meeting, when this last parking study came in, myself, Paul Swinson, and Jim Cherico on the phone with the mayor stood right there. Within 10 minutes, we all agreed to that, which we'd all agreed to that before.
Okay.
Problem is, Paul's doing a lot of traveling now. Cherico's back and forth between Florida, Chapel Hill, and wherever else he goes. I'm always here. I'm the easiest guy in Southport to find. If I'm not at the restaurant, give me 10 minutes, I'll be back. But that is a simple solution. Okay. It cuts down the dust, which I know this person right here bitches about all the time. But we constantly have sand in the road from the wind. There's been no difference in the amount of sand at this corner anymore since I put the asphalt. Wind carries it. You can look at Yacht Basin Drive in between Frying Pan and American Fish and the two houses, see how much sand's on that road, and it doesn't have many cars on it. But to alleviate that, better term, bitching, that's what the 57 sounds like.
So just so I'm clear, the answer is yes?
Yes.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
I have a couple comments. So the way I see this, I imagine nobody's going to be against this, but I see it as an opportunity without making it too complicated. I would say this is an opportunity to make it more pedestrian friendly along the parcels. I looked at it and who owned what. If we did like a pathway, like a pedestrian pathway through the middle, down following the parcel lines with like a 3-foot easement from each parcel, because otherwise the pedestrians got to walk through all the traffic. There may be fences they'll have to go around, or they have to go around the block.
No, we wouldn't put fences. There
Okay.
are now just because of.
But it would make sense to me to take a look at that pedestrian option without complicating things, because this is an opportunity right now before it's, well, we didn't think of that.
Okay. They have brought that up in previous committee meetings. How much time have you spent in the yacht basin on a Friday or Saturday night in the middle of July?
I haven't kept count, but I've been there for quite a bit.
Okay. The tourists that come down don't give a damn about a pedestrian lane right here. 90% of the people come this way. They're going to walk straight across. So you can build whatever you want. It's still not going to get used like you want it to. If they park here, they're going to walk straight. If they park here, they're going to cut across. They park here, they're going to cut. One of the last committee meetings I was in said, and I think Karen, you were there with safety. If we wanted to put a sidewalk, it needs to be on this side of the street and eliminate that parking versus having them cross the road here out of these parking lots instead of maybe putting a pedestrian crossing at the corner or somewhere right in here. The tourists are going to go where they want to go. I wouldn't put parking curbs in here. They're just going to run over and blow tires. Again, keep it simple. Border the outside of the lot, gravel it, let it go.
And I know what you're talking about because when Larry Price had his boat business there, he used those wood borders to cut down on the amount of erosion he had because he had his boat stored behind his building. That was torn down during Hurricane Diane, I believe it was. But so that's when he'd already moved everything out. But that's why that blue warehouse building isn't there anymore. But anyway, graveling all of that over is going to cut down also too, not only on the dust, but the erosion and the amount of potholes and everything else there, which people can't see at night anyway. So it's going to help out as a safety issue as well. And on your point of the tourists going where they want to, many times I see the crosswalks we have in town. Where do they cross? In the middle of the street. They don't go to the crosswalks. They just wander around wherever they want to. They're in a different world.
Try to go down Yacht Basin Drive on a Friday or Saturday.
Oh, I have,
There's
yeah.
50 people in the road, and none of them move for a car.
Mm-mm.
They just walk strapping up across the entire road.
Yeah, I know they treat it as a large sidewalk. Yeah, and I'm very familiar with that. Even before there were restaurants down there, when people would walk through, well, we called it with Southport Reeboks. That's what the fishermen would walk through, but you would see you'd see everything coming out of there. But yeah, I know what you're talking about, and it would simplify it. Just and then that gives us something to look at for future as well. You know, if it doesn't work, but we've got to do something. I mean, in all seriousness, because we are out of space in this town. We are out of space. As much as I hate to say it, when I first started on the board, one of the things we talked about was that parking. The very first meeting I went to when I was sworn in as an alternate was about Yacht Basin parking, and we met right over there in the firehouse.
And the city at that time had come to us and asked us to rezone it to commercial.
Right.
And that's when that process started.
Yeah.
Went through all that. Then a lot of it came down to making myself and Cherico and Mark look like idiots trying to get it zoned commercial, because then it's, they're going to put a Wings and McDonald's right here. That was never the point. We're just trying to make it so parking is legal. But this is 5 years.
Yeah.
I agree, Craig, with what you're saying. I was on that initial committee that went through this, and it was the vision of Mayor Hayden to say we need to do something down here because it's being used for something for which it is not zoned. So we need to formalize, basically, that's what this is, formalize what we're actually doing. So that everything is right by the books. That's why we're looking at an overlay to get this done. I'm understanding what you're saying. I'm more than willing at this point in time to give Western North Carolina all the 57 that we can find. They are much more deserving of it at this time, so we can wait our turn to get something. I'm for getting this in place. I still will go back to say, because I love our town's history, I'd still say at some point I would like, and it's not y'all's place to do it, this will be on the city, but I do want us to look at paying homage to the history of that yacht basin, what we've got, and trying to educate folks to, as I said before, that they're in a spot that's more than where great restaurants are and bars and place to get on their tour boat, that they need, that it would be nice to give them some education about where you stand, what used to happen here. So at some point, I would like for the city to revisit that. But I would also say, when our committee worked on this before, and I know there were, Mo, are we any further towards, just point of fact, is it any further towards finding those drawings that were done before?
The drawing that I received, I don't believe is what you've asked for. It's very, there's no detail. It's just colored blocks.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. Because there were, and Craig, you might remember this, that we had sketches that we met with y'all about.
Tom was involved, Tom Lombardi, if I'm remembering right.
I can't remember if Tom was in there. Roy Pender was there. Gustavo Mabelli was in there as well.
But those drawings also wanted the berms and all that.
Right, it did include that,
and
absolutely.
That's what we're saying, no, it's a waste of time. Storm's gonna wipe that out.
I understand your comment on that. I thank you for that. I do, and it may be like a next step, as I say, for the city down the road to look at some aesthetics for the area, whatever we want to do about that. I think this is going to be a great improvement to get the 57 in down there. I think that in itself, with your explanation of dirt on Yacht Basin Drive and how everything blows, I think it may contribute to helping the drainage when water does come in. It does that at high tide. So maybe that will help improve that as well. But I think looking back at, and in our packets, we've gotten this information of what's been done, considered up to this point. It's good to have this, but I agree that we need to move ahead with finalizing it. I guess at this point, I would say, and I hate to keep my back turned to the folks at this end, if there's not any other comments or questions, Kevin, are you making a motion that we convene a committee just to basically formalize what we've sat here and talked about tonight, and meet with the owners to make sure that everyone is hearing the same thing? I hate for the planning board to take action tonight, but not that I don't trust you, Craig, with my life, but an agreement that was reached in the middle of a parking lot. I think we need to formalize it a little bit better than that. So
that'll delay it another month, and then that'll go to the alderman, which will delay it another month. So then we're in March. So you're talking about, again, getting this done during the season.
Do you have, in your investigations or information, since you are connected with the western part of the state a lot more than a lot of us here, are there projections about when 57 is going to be available? No.
But I could go ahead and get my lot bordered. I could have that done.
Okay. So then.
That's a day project. I did the yoga dock in a day. Guys showed up at 8 o'clock on Friday morning. We got done at 8 o'clock at night. But it's done, and those 8x8s won't move. I could get that bordered. Again, you're still going to have the setbacks and the right-of-ways. It'll be there. It'll be to the line, but it'll be, so you still got that space. But that will define it more.
So Mo, as far as staff goes, what staff's recommendation about having a review committee set or moving ahead with it as is?
I feel that if the property owners are all in agreement and the board feels that the language that's presented, or if there's any tweaking that you would like to make, we could move forward. It will take several months at the Board of Aldermen just because of the process itself, because we'll have to call a public hearing and then have the public hearing the next month. So that is just the process, just so you have that information. I see no reason if the board chooses not to move forward with it.
So what's the board's pleasure, folks? What are we doing?
You don't know when you can get that 57 gravel, do you?
Not that much. I mean, I can get a dump truck, but I can't get enough. The yoga lot itself, it'd be 10 dump truck loads.
Okay. But you could go ahead and border it.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Would anybody have any problem with them agreeing to allow them to border that and then still review? And then that way they could, yeah.
I'm not going to border it.
No. What I'm talking about is just as far as like what we want to do with the right of ways and stuff like that. I'm not talking about the inside, but just. Or do we need a further?
Everybody's red light is on.
Oh, okay.
I would like to go into the review committee because, like I said earlier, I think there's an opportunity before hard lumber and rebar goes in. You don't have your stone right now anyway. I understand you could get your timbers in, but I think we should take a little bit closer look at it. I think there's an opportunity being missed.
Question. Is there any barrier to the owners grading and bringing in stone before formal approval by the alderman?
I mean, technically, no improvements can be made for a public parking area or a commercial parking area, but since it is not an allowed use in a residential zoning district.
It's zoned residential, so part of it. We're already doing things that we're not supposed to be doing down there. Hence the need to get it corrected. So, Mo, you're in agreement that should not start happening before this gets done.
Correct.
I'll be too worried about this corner to be able to stop and take care of that. And so will Paul and so will Cherokee. So that would put it till October. So we've lost another season.
Well, I tend to agree with Fred that we can't get the 57 anyway, and we don't know when we're going to be able to do it. If we convene, if we take a vote to convene a review committee and we move our action to the alderman just as soon as we can, and it's there, that apparently from what I'm understanding from the last alderman's meeting, the meeting that took place in the parking lot, everybody was cool with what was being proposed then. I can't see why it would not progress from the alderman from there so that we could do it as quickly as possible.
Well, I'm just trying to find out what opportunity do you think will be missed, Fred, that we hadn't gone over with in the last 5 years?
I think for me, I don't know how the other board members feel, but to look at the plat maps and talk about it and say, what about this? What about this? What about this? Right now, we're just assuming bases have been covered and all that's not going to work, but I'm not convinced of that. And again, I'm thinking of pedestrian flow. That's my, and it would be great to make that area nicer looking, like somebody cares about it. But if you go ahead and do your timbers now, and there's no stone, and then we have some more crazy events, it's just going to wash sand everywhere anyway, and then you have to regrade inside it again.
Sorry, we already regraded. That's why this area right now is all remilled asphalt, because we're getting potholes. One of them got pretty deep. So I have a guy, Kenny Green, that comes in and grades this out for me. Grades my parking lot, grades the yoga lot. We keep all that up. We're doing it. We're taking care of that anyway. I'm the only one that does it.
Through the chair. Mo, is there anything that would keep somebody from getting a dump load of 57 stone in a residential area and putting it in their yard?
They could do some stone, but they would not be using it for a commercial parking lot.
Understood, but there's nothing to prevent me from ordering 18 yards of stone and putting it in my backyard.
Correct.
Okay.
If that's what you proposed for your daughter for her wedding, I can see why she's bucking you.
Yeah. I guess I'm looking at this the other side. This has been going on for some time. I've read about it a number of times in the paper. I'm not sure why it would need a review. It's been reviewed quite a bit. You're really talking about two different things, 57 stone and wooden borders, 8x8 wooden borders. I've looked at just out of curiosity, went down to the Yoga Dock, checked that out. It's a phenomenal job. I really like the way it was done with the 8x8s and the rebar and everything else. But just so I understand the process, what would a review committee really, what's missing here? Because I'm not seeing what's missing. It's really just putting a 8x8 border, when the stone becomes available, is adding that to it. Can this be approved in a subject to sort of way, so that subject to review by committee, and then the availability of stone when it becomes available? I mean, it's been used as a parking lot now. Is it really going to hurt it if we don't have 57 stone until the next year or so?
Mo, in my time on the planning board, I don't know of any approvals that have been done subject to a committee going through. We've kind of gone in reverse and done the committee work first, and Fred has mentioned or alluded to the things that he would want a committee to look at, but I'm not saying either way. This is the full board's choice on that, and if we've got Kevin or Larry, if there's a motion to come forward to move on this now, I'm assuming that our approval of the amendment, the text that's been provided to us, that would need to go back to the alderman. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
So am I hearing a motion that we accept staff's drafted amendment from the 2021 Yacht Basins Committee work and the reinforcement from the parking study and the adoption of the UDO and what's being presented as the at least the solution for the time being to move this forward? And Greg, I'll tell you, I'm all for moving it forward. The work that was done before, I was ready to lay down in the streets to get it approved then down there. So do I hear a motion that we accept staff's drafted amendment?
I would make that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Larry. Is there a second?
Second.
Will? Thank you. We do have a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? All in favor, raise your hands, please. All opposed? Motion fails. Seeing this, we will assign a review committee to look over this. Craig, I promise, I'll commit to you and the other owners that this will be done just as expeditiously as we can so that we can get something on the move for this. We all recognize how important this is to the whole of town. So we will move forward. Do I see hands for volunteers to serve on the review committee? Kevin and Fred? Oh goodness, I love it. Usually I'm pulling names out of a hat, folks. So this is great. Okay, so we'll, if we can, we'll put Mr. Beauvais, this will be your first assignment. Thank you, sir. And we can have 3? Okay. Fred, if you'll be on that, please, as well. And Kevin, if you'll help out with that, I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much, folks. And Mo, in light of that, if we can start looking at dates, and gentlemen, if you'll work with us best you can to move this along, I would appreciate that. And we'll see what comes from this at next month's meeting. Craig, we thank you for your time, and Mo, thank you for the presentation.
One other thing, if I could add.
Please do, Will.
One other thing, if I could add to that, because of the scheduling that we allow the owners to be there to phone in and be part of that. That way we don't have to have them actually physically there because it is such a scheduling conflict. And that way we can be ensured that we get it done as fast as possible.
I absolutely agree. It's like herding wet cats to try to get everybody in one spot at the same time and happy about it. So yes, I think that's the great idea. Thank you, Will. We'll work on that date then.
A quick question, Madam Chair. How long does it usually take from the time that this board approves or recommends for approval to the alderman? How long does that take, Mo, between public comment and advertising and things like that? What's that timeline usually?
It can take up to 3 months from the time
So
the
about 90
planning
days.
board, yes. Now, the Board of Aldermen does have the ability to hold a public hearing and the vote at the same night if they choose.
Okay.
But many times they will wait to make sure that they have time to consider the public comments.
Great, thank you, thank you.
And Mo, we're going to keep you up there. We'll move on to new business, item K, folks. This is pages 51 to 61. They're right-of-way UDO text amendments for parking and landscaping.
Yes, thank you again, Chair and members of the board. This evening, we're coming to you with amendments to sections 3.14 to parking and 3.17 landscape and buffering for the rights-of-way text amendments. The Board of Aldermen made amendments to Section 16 to the City Code of Ordinances to clarify exactly what types of encroachments and how these encroachments can be installed within the public right-of-way. And if you'll remember, I came to you in June with some text amendments that were very similar to this, but after that process started, the board made some larger changes, and it was necessary to bring it back to the planning board. It was not just they were more significant than just a few minor tweaks to the language. So what the first portion is the minimum off-street parking requirements. So this will allow the size, and they will give the size of the parking pad that is allowed. So you have a 20-foot parking pad that follows the dimensions of a regular parking space in our standards. It also provides surfacing standards for the parking, and then there needs to be a review and approval in writing, which we have created a online permit, which will be that approval, and it is available. I would like to make one, I apologize. So that's what these 3 different paragraphs are outlining for you. Again, 2 spaces, 20 feet in width. Surfacing is going to be your turf grass, pervious pavers, and then the pervious number 57 driveway slate with wood borders, no more than 2 inches above. Previous parking that is existing is allowed to remain. And then again, the parking will require the review and approval from the UDO administrator, Public Works, and the fire marshal for those. So that is the off-street parking section of this. So then 3.17 is the landscaping on public park or property. Originally,
Mo, can I stop you just a second? I'm sorry. So what we're seeing here now for 3.14, what's on page 52 in our packets, it starts 3.14. There are no changes. That's just for reference leading into that table and this text amendment, correct?
That is correct. The only changes are going to be those that are highlighted and underlined.
And in yellow. And this is all done in concert with the comments and the discussion from the Board of Aldermen and that vote that was taken about the right of way.
Yes, so this mirrors the city ordinance, just so that it is in the UDO, since previously there have not been parking allowances in the ordinance.
I just wanted to get that clarified for everybody.
Yes,
Thank you, sir.
Yes. So the next is section 3.17, landscaping on public property. Originally in the UDO, or as it exists in the UDO now, the portion in number 1 that is not highlighted and not underlined is the only portion of the UDO that exists. So it was stating that you could not place anything above the horizontal plane within the right-of-way. So the aldermen have allowed to say that you can have, excuse me, installation of turf grasses, so long as they are not obstructing any passage of the persons, vehicles, or within the public right-of-way obstructs or interferes lawful parking within the public right-of-way. The other two are the vegetation and other protective measurements consistent with the arboricultural BMPs are allowed to be installed within a 10-foot radius of existing public trees, which will be protection from parking. And that, again, will require the review and written approval from the UDO administrator, public services, and the fire marshal. And then the third new addition is the private installation of native trees in the public right-of-way when a tree must be removed for construction, or if it is diseased and dead and the adjacent property owner would like to replace that tree. And then that action will require consultation and coordination with the forestry committee, as well as the permit that we have put together online. So those are the two. As I said, they mirror exactly what the city ordinance says. So we find that this is consistent with the comp plan staff and other adopted plans, and recommend approval of the text amendments to this board.
I'm going to beg to say I may not be reading this right again, but look at the D1 for me in the second line.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and I don't know how yes, I don't know what happened but yes, let me give you the full sentence for that one. So it's the installation of turf grasses on grade is allowed within the right-of-way. In addition, it shall be unlawful for any person to take any action whatsoever within any public rights-of-way which creates a hazardous condition or safety hazard, or which otherwise interferes with or obstructs in any manner the passage of persons or vehicles upon or within said public rights-of-way, or which obstructs, interferes, or hinders lawful parking within any public rights-of-way.
That's a lot of addition. I was thinking when I first said that if it was going to be just a couple words, but we're talking about a lot.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't.
And then going down into number 3, that first line, it looks like text is missing there. Is permitted when city must be removed. I don't think we want to remove our city. Am I reading that wrong? Yes, I am reading it wrong?
No, you're not. It's sort of buggered.
I'll find that language.
I guess if it was just a word or two, I think we could dispense with it, but it looks like there's quite a bit that's missing out of both of those areas.
I apologize.
It's okay. I want you to find it so that we're on the same page about it.
It would be a city tree must be removed for construction, or when a tree must be removed due to the health of the tree.
Okay, so on number 3, it would be private installation of native trees within the right-of-way is permitted when a city tree must be removed?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a small correction that I think we can live with. I'm not, and of course everybody else can chime in, but the omission in number 1 seemed to be a lot more than.
So the admission is, in addition, it shall be unlawful for any person to take any action whatsoever within any public rights of way which creates a hazardous condition. So that was the portion of the sentence that was missing.
Okay, and how does that blend on in with safety hazard?
It says which creates a hazardous condition or safety hazard.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So those 3 words are the only issue on that particular sentence? Is that right?
That portion
There's
of the
quite
sentence
a
I
few
just
words missing there.
Do you have a hard copy that we could all look at? I mean, is this a pretty timely thing we need to make progress on, right? Could we do that? And then?
It's already within the city ordinances, it's just not in the UDO, so we can enforce it now. If you'd like me to bring back the corrected language, I'm happy to do that.
So we can enforce it
We
now,
can enforce
right?
it now. We
And-
want it to be in the UDO so people are aware of it, but
And it is correct in ordinance now?
Yes, ma'am.
This is
Yes.
just putting it in here, okay?
yes.
Did someone else want to see that? Sorry to be picky about it, Mo, but if we're going to put it in the UDO, we want it to be right
Of
from the
course,
beginning.
absolutely.
Before it gets pointed out to us and we have to go back through this process again, right? Is there anyone on the board that would take issue with not seeing this brought back to us corrected so that it would prevent us from taking action to move forward with this text amendment tonight? Okay. So for us then, Mo, since this is a UDO amendment again, we need to forward this back to the Board of Aldermen. So for forwarding that back to the Board of Aldermen, do I hear a motion to accept staff's drafted amendments to mirror the ordinance that's already in place for sections 3.14 parking and section 3.17 landscaping and buffers for adoption into the UDO?
Madam Chairman, I make such a motion, and with noted in the public record that we've been shown a document that has the corrected language, and we've reviewed it.
I would second that.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was Kevin that made the motion, and Will. Thank you for that clarifying statement. Kevin, we do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion does carry. And I'm not, thank you. Seeing that consistency statement is what I was getting ready to say. So we will need someone to read the consistency statement into the record. Volunteer for that? No, you didn't volunteer?
You did?
No, I'll read it.
I volunteered.
Oh, you volunteered him? Oh, no, okay, no. All right. This is for Amendment ZTA 25-02. The City of Southport Planning Board hereby recommends adoption of the proposed zoning text amendment to the Board of Aldermen and finds that it is consistent with the city's 2014 CAMA Core Land Use Plan, originally adopted November 13th, 2014, and subsequently amended by the Board of Aldermen. More specifically, the proposed amendment is consistent with Policy 7.22. The city shall continually maintain all official planning documents. Thank you so much for that action. We appreciate that. And Mo, I'm going to have this laying with that amendment now. All right, we are moving on to item L now, other business planning updates.
Yes, I have a couple things I would like to
You don't
just
look
update
like Wendell.
everyone. I'm sorry?
You don't look like Wendell, wasn't it? But
I know, I apologize.
okay, go ahead, please.
Anyway, okay. Three things that we'd like to go over. First is the comprehensive plan. The Board of Aldermen is in the process of reviewing it for comments. We had also provided a link to the planning board at your last meeting. There is an updated plan. I can send you the new link that you're to please look at, and we are still encouraging any comments you may have, questions you may have. If you prefer a hard copy, I'd be happy to get a copy for you. We can get one as soon as tomorrow if you would like. Or if you just want to see the plan for the future printed out, just so you can look at those. And so if we can get some comments on that in the next week, that would be great. We are hoping to have the updated draft to the Board of Aldermen at their first February meeting to get our blessing to send it to the Division of Coastal Management for their review period. So that is the comprehensive plan update. So again, I'll get that link to you in any moment. The next one is the right-of-way that the Board of Aldermen have approved. So part of their approval is that any hardened structures within the right-of-way and fences, walls, planter boxes, trellises, parking delineations, structures that are above 2 inches of the grade, they have a 6-month grace period, so those hardened structures must be removed by June 12th of 2025. Again, that's June 12th, 2025. And we're asked, please, voluntary compliance within this time frame, and it will not be a violation. There are some exceptions for this removal. Any existing vegetation that is within the right-of-way is permitted to exist and stay, and can be replaced if necessary. And also any existing parking pads that don't meet the new regulations are able to exist as they have been previously installed. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that. There have been press releases on this and public outreach. There will be more public outreach in the next couple months. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a permit. We have a permit on our permit portal. It's a right-of-way permit that would allow the new parking that is outlined in the Code of Ordinances, any vegetation around the trees, and also if you need to plant a tree in the right-of-way. That is a free permit, very similar to our tree permit. We want to encourage everyone to come in and get their permit, and it is live now. So anyone who wants to do anything new starting now will require a permit.
Is part of this process, Mo, for forgiveness or grace for those hardened structures? How are we handling that? Is that in place now, a process for folks to apply for?
There is no grace period. All hardened structures must be removed.
Okay.
There are none that are able to remain. With one exception, that fences in a district that has on-street parking with curb and a public sidewalk, fences on the private property side of the sidewalk, if it happens to be in the right-of-way, those are allowed to remain. So we won't be removing that urban fabric there. But that's mainly going to be down in the historic areas of the city.
Thank you. Anything else?
The last thing I wanted to bring up, and I mentioned it at the last meeting, Brunswick County is updating their UDO, and they're having community meetings the last week of January. So there are 3. We've got one Monday the 27th, Wednesday the 29th, and Thursday, the 30th. They are all at 6 o'clock, between 6 and 8, and it's a come and go. It's not going to be a formal presentation. They're just going to have their planners there available to talk about what they're proposing. I'm sure they'll have some documents or some posters there. The Monday meeting is in Winnebago at the Town Creek Community Building. So Monday, January 27th, Town Creek Park Community Building. Wednesday, January 29th, is at the St. James Community Center. And then Thursday, the 30th, is at the Brunswick Center at Shallotte, in Shallotte. And that concludes our updates.
Any questions for Mo on the update?
One thing for clarification, I had to ask this question. So the right-of-way stuff that Mo was talking about, my understanding is that's city ordinance, not the UDO, correct?
Yes, sir. This is enforcing the city ordinances that have already been adopted and are effective.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mo. Appreciate that. Okay, we are looking at item L now, other business. We've done our planning update. Is there anything additional to be brought for other business tonight? We'll move on to item M then, announcements. Anyone? I'll make note that we did have a couple snafus with individual applications and some colliginous decisions for the planning board appointments this round. It's my hope that we will work to soon resolve those issues and have our alternate position filled very soon. Anything else? So then, for us all, I will wish everyone safety in our Siberian blast that's coming our way. We ask you to stay warm and well. And now, with no other business, can I get a motion that we adjourn? Thank you, Will. And Larry was quick with that second. He's had all the fun he can stand for tonight. All right, we do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone, for attending. Our meeting is adjourned at 8:06. Good night, everyone. Thank you, new members, for your participation.